Assistant U.S. Attorney here in Colorado, where I traveled to the four corners of the state, prosecuted environmental crimes, corporate fraud, waste, and abuse. I prosecuted people that committed murders or tried to commit murders of witnesses in state cases against them. Scams, again, that targeted our elderly population and others. I also prosecuted public corruption offenses and investigated both Democrats and Republicans, in addition to doing civil rights prosecution. And so, in the course, is that the timer? Excuse me. All right, thank you. So in the course of this evening, I'd love to be able to talk to you about why that experience is the right experience to make sure that Colorado is the best fighter for this next chapter. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Michael Doherty, and I'm running for Attorney General of Colorado because we are facing the greatest threat to our democracy in my entire lifetime, and the fight is on. And throughout my entire career, I've been a prosecutor for justice. Criminal justice, racial justice, environmental justice, and economic justice. And that's what we need in the Attorney General's office, leading us to a better future, but also defending our democracy. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, the proud grandson of Irish immigrants who came over here for the freedoms and opportunities this country offered to them then. I put myself through community college by loading trucks at UPS on the night shift as a member of the Teamsters, and I will always fight for our workers. And I went to law school to go into public service. And that's what I started doing at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and I rose up through the ranks there, and ended up being in a position where I supervised and led 1,300 people at the Manhattan DA's office in the fight for justice. But I moved to the great state of Colorado for a whole bunch of wonderful reasons, but also to work for the Colorado Attorney General's office. And 8 months after we arrived, I was put in charge of the entire criminal section for the Attorney General's office. I'm the one candidate who's worked at that office I now seek to lead. I'm excited to be with you tonight. I'd be honored to be the next Attorney General. Thank you.
Jenny Griswold.
Okay, there we go. Good evening. My name is Jenna Griswold, and I'm running for Attorney General. Now, you may know me as Secretary of State, but what you may not know is I grew up in rural Colorado, and we sometimes went to food banks. I'm first in my family to go to a four-year college and law school, and still have over $200,000 in student loans. I know working people are getting crushed. As Attorney General, we'll go after corporate greed. We'll stand with labor in every fight. We'll defend abortion access and get stronger assault weapons ban passed. And if ICE commits a crime in Colorado, I will prosecute them. I went to law school to help families like yours and like mine. When our democracy came under attack, I did not hesitate. After January 6th, MAGA extremists attacked our elections. Others were cautious. I fought back. And when Tina Peters tried to sabotage her elections, I removed her from direct election oversight and helped make sure she was held accountable. I would love to have your support in this campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, David Seligman.
Good evening, everybody. My name is David Seligman, Workers' Rights, Civil Rights, Consumer Protection Lawyer, Executive Director of the legal nonprofit Towards Justice. Look, I took out loans, I went to Harvard Law School, I clerked for federal judges, but I saw a legal system that allowed the wealthy and powerful to trample our rights and get away with it. The system that gave rise to the moment of crisis we're in right now. So I moved home to Colorado. I've dedicated every day of my career to standing up in court for working families, using the law in ways no one had tried before, for Amazon delivery drivers, for renters, for working families drowning in medical debt, for communities spied upon by AI, for thousands and thousands locked up at the Immigration Detention Center here in Aurora, Colorado. I've sued the Trump administration and won. I've sued the Polis administration and won. We just stopped the governor from turning over Coloradans' personal information to ICE. For me, this fight has never been about the red team versus the blue team. It's always been about the many versus the money. And that's the kind of leadership we need in Colorado right now.
Well, 1 minute for this, and we'll start with Michael Doherty. The Attorney General has authority over consumer protection, criminal justice, environmental enforcement, civil rights, protecting the state's land, water, and people, as some have put it, a limited staff and resources. What will be your litmus test for determining which cases to pursue and which not to?
As the district attorney for Boulder County for the past 8 years, this has been a reality when we take on issues around criminal justice reform and prosecuting major cases. And as the next attorney general, it'll be my job to defend Colorado's water, our reproductive rights, our immigrants, public safety, and our environment. So it's about recognizing, having worked at the AG's office and having been a leader at the Attorney General's office, I know firsthand what it means to prioritize those things and to make sure that what's causing the greatest harm to Colorado has to be at the top of my list. So when it comes to protecting elections and defending our democracy, but also protecting our water and our environment, that is a priority for me. And it's why I've been working on this issue, and I was the head of the Environmental Crimes Unit when I was at the Attorney General's office. It's about protecting the precious water that we have, especially given the winter we just went through, and recognizing that the Attorney General has to play a greater role in the civil, criminal enforcement of our environmental protections. Take, for example, Suncor. They were fined $2 million in a year where they were making $2 billion per quarter. That was a failure by the state of Colorado to stand up for the lower income communities and communities of color. I will fight for those communities, and I'll fight for Colorado every day. Thank you.
That's a great question, because there are limited resources. Must defend is our democracy and rule of law. We are in a time where we need fighters in office, and that's who I am. As Secretary of State, I've led the fight to defend democracy against MAGA and Donald Trump, and I'll continue to do that as Attorney General. When it comes to climate, we are seeing the EPA being gutted. We do need strong enforcement. I actually think there needs to be a law change so the Attorney General can enforce quicker without having to go through the governor's office or an agency of the governor to make sure our water is clean and our air is clean. But when it comes to consumer protection and antitrust, I think your question really strikes there. For me, I am always going to prioritize cases that are affecting the state of Colorado and Coloradans and affecting regular people, your pocketbooks. We know that affordability is just getting out of control. Rent, mortgage payments are too high. The cost of groceries are too high. The cost of gas is skyrocketing. So prioritizing the cases that are touching the middle class is how I'm going to prioritize if we need to do that.
All right, thank you. David.
The wealthy and powerful are trampling our rights, and they are getting away with it, and the Attorney General is uniquely positioned to take on the most essential fights for our safety, for our prosperity, for our freedom. A couple of key priorities. First, right now in Colorado, we have to fight for the most marginalized who are being bullied, immigrants in particular, across our state who are terrified to come forward to call 911. I had a client the other day, a couple of months ago, who told us that her boss told her the next time she asks for a paycheck, she'll get a bullet in the head and a call to ICE. The federal government is trampling their rights. The Attorney General is uniquely positioned to fight back and to prioritize those cases. We also have to confront an affordability crisis that is fundamentally an accountability crisis, where corporations are ripping us off and getting away with it. And we absolutely have to prioritize environmental enforcement. We cannot lose track of the existential threat of climate change with respect to Secretary Griswold. The AG's office already has the tools to go on offense right now to make polluters pay. We don't need to wait for the legislature to do that.
All right, thank you.
I'll make a jump in, right?
Yeah, I should say, someone mentions the other candidate, you'll get 30 seconds to respond.
At
Let's,
the end, like after.
go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things, of course, the Attorney General's office is advising many of the agencies that are taking on Suncor and other corporate polluters. But sometimes state government goes a little too slow. And when we're seeing the EPA be gutted, when we're seeing climate change no longer be a priority of the White House, we need to really lean in. So for the Attorney General to be able to file lawsuits without going through a governor's agency is a high priority, something that has been attempted before. I think that's what we have to do again. Now, I grew up in the canyon in between Drake, Colorado, and Estes Park,
Okay.
and I'll leave it with that.
Do I get 30 seconds? No. Well, otherwise we just spiral. Actually, you know what? Let's move on.
Yeah, sure. Ethel, what's your litmus test for deciding how to allocate the office's resources?
So a few things that I want to add here. Number one, this is the mark of what it means to be a leader and have someone who has management and supervisory experience in a government office, which is what this is. In my last role in the Department of Justice, I was a senior appointee of the Biden-Harris administration. I was the appointee that administration chose to lead all antitrust litigation and consumer protection work related to antitrust for the entire country of the Department of Justice. I led a team of 800 lawyers and professional staff, more than $200 million budget, so I am very familiar with having to make the trade-offs that if you file one case, you're not filing another. And so here's how I think about it. We've heard up here tonight all sorts of things about holding polluters accountable, holding corporations that drive up the cost of our groceries accountable, healthcare, and other things. I've already done it. The way that we make sure that this litmus test is met and that we achieve in an effective and efficient way enforcement such that Colorado benefits is to make sure that we have a leader for whom this is not the first time at the rodeo and knows how to use those resources. I have a track record, I'm that leader.
Thank you. We'll go with Jenna. This time in 1 minute. In 2025, more than 75 lawsuits were filed against the Trump administration by Democratic state attorneys general. Which of the lawsuits that Colorado led or joined would you have passed on? And which of the lawsuits that Colorado didn't get involved with would you have pursued?
That's a great question. I think it's really important that we hold the line against Trump breaking the law and undermining the Constitution. And just to share, the Attorney General is not, each Attorney General, each Democrat is not bringing their own lawsuit. They often are working together with one state leading and other states joining. So I do think that partnership is highly important. For example, there have been 2 executive orders on elections. Colorado is party, but Colorado is not leading the charge on either of those. So honestly, Ernest, I would have joined all the lawsuits and potentially more. I do think it may be a question of resources. I think we should join as many as possible. Right now, the office is keeping up with the illegality of the Trump administration. But there is a point where there's just not enough people, and that's why I think having this democratic partnership among AGs across the nation is something we must continue to do.
All right, thank you. Good.
Look, the Trump administration is trampling our rights left and right, and they're getting away with it. We have to use all of the authority of the office to protect the people of Colorado when Coloradans are harmed. That's been AG Weiser's test. That would be my test too. And I agree with the way that he has applied the test. There's not a case that the Colorado has brought or joined that I would not be participating in. I do want to highlight the kinds of cases that I think we're going to have to see going forward. This project isn't only about taking on the Trump administration, suing them directly. Increasingly, it's going to be about using the tools of the law, state law, to hold accountable all of those engaged in the corruption and cruelty of the administration. That's the work that I've been doing my entire career. For example, bringing the first in the nation case against the GEO Group, the private prison contractor running the Immigration Detention Center in Aurora. We're going to have to use the tools of state law to take on political corruption. Those who try to hijack our democracy need to be held accountable when they do it. That's why it's so dangerous that Governor Polis communicated to Peter Sessions.
Okay. Which lawsuits would you have passed on? Which would you join in?
So I agree with General Weiser's decision to file the 65 lawsuits that have been filed. I think some of the early lawsuits, to specifically answer your question, Ernest, that sound like in the early days when federal workers were being fired, that impacted Coloradans, those theories of the case were just not as developed back then as they are today. And so that's the benefit of time, right? But I want to take a step back, because we just saw a contrast in 2 approaches: join all the lawsuits and then join some of the lawsuits or agrees with General Weiser. And I want to be clear about where I stand on this. The Democratic Coalition of Attorneys General have filed in excess of 105 lawsuits. The state of Colorado has joined approximately 65. I think that is the appropriate balance, and here's why. I don't think that on its own being anti-Trump is a political philosophy that is complete or meets this moment or solves the needs of Coloradans. We have to be for something on the other side of the Trump presidency. So what are we for? We are for a society and an economy that works for all of us. We have to use every single tool in our toolkit to make sure that the Trump administration doesn't define our agenda, that Coloradans decide our agenda. And that's what I'll do as your next AG.
next Attorney General will be on the front lines of defending our democracy and the rule of law. And the next Attorney General can't simply tweet at Donald Trump. It's about beating Trump in court. And that's the kind of work I've been doing my entire career as a prosecutor and as a leader. So in terms of what lawsuits I would have stayed out of, I think Phil Weiser's approached it the right way, and I'll have the same criteria. And it's really important here that it's when Colorado's being harmed and Trump is violating the U.S. Constitution or the law. And that's where experience matters. The last thing in the world Colorado needs, at a time when we're so divided already, is a hyper-partisan attorney general who's looking to get their face on cable TV. I'm the guy who goes to court to say, I'm here on behalf of the people. That's what I've been doing for 30 years. And I don't make that decision lightly. So whether it's prosecuting the King Soopers mass murder, or the Pearl Street firebombing, or leading the investigation into the Marshall fire, it's always about doing the right thing. That's what I'll do in standing for Colorado. The AG is on the front lines right now. I don't know about you, but I view Congress as basically dysfunctional. They are no longer a check on the White House. So it's incumbent upon the AG to have not only the ability and the experience, but also the integrity to make the right decisions, not based on politics. That's what I'll stand for as your next Attorney General.
All right, thank you. This should be a topic that's come up and will probably come up again through the night. It's water. David, for you to start this round. Speaking of litigation there, what will you do as Attorney General to protect Colorado's water rights in the Colorado River Basin, both from lower basin states and the federal government over the next few years, while we're looking at possibly the Colorado River Compact being renegotiated, coming up for grabs? What's going to happen, and what will you do in office?
Great question. Great question. First, let's start with the easy stuff. I'm sick and tired of corporations and billionaires stealing our water. Right? We've got big tech, soon-to-be trillionaires, building data centers that are going to guzzle 1 million gallons of water a day. Fracking wells that are guzzling 25 million gallons of water per well. Right? Let's take on the easy stuff first. Let's address those problems to make sure that the water we have in Colorado, that it goes to the ranchers, the farmers, the small businesses across Colorado that rely on it for the Colorado way of life. That's absolutely essential. We're going to need to continue to protect the interests of Colorado, especially against the lower basin states, and we shouldn't have big ag monopolists, taking up water in Arizona to grow alfalfa to send it to China. We've got to hold the line. We're going to have to continue to take on that fight. I think that's why it's absolutely essential that we elect an experienced Attorney General who's ready on day one to use the law to fight for the people of Colorado.
All right, thank you. How will you protect our water in the Colorado River Basin?
So I want to start where David ended, which is I agree, we need experience in order to take on this fight. A few things on water. Number one, the Colorado River Compact presents a legal issue that has not been before the Supreme Court, I think, in between 50 or 75 years. This is a question of original jurisdiction when there is a lawsuit, and I think it will likely be when, not if, it will go directly to the United States Supreme Court that is hostile to some of the interests of a state like Colorado. And so that requires expertise and judgment in terms of crafting the lower court record and making sure that we look them in the eye and say no to Colorado, right? And so in my view, I think that the negotiations have fallen apart because lower basin states are asking upper basin states to continue to take a haircut without themselves doing the same. That requires expertise and diplomacy and being able to navigate those issues, pardon the pun there, right? In terms of making sure those lower basin states meet their obligations as well. There is a special delicacy about taking this fight to the court as well, because suddenly we are going to be suing our sister states potentially that are helping us in this fight against the Trump administration. That requires care and agility and flexibility and experience. And so the last thing I will say is that you just heard talk about taking on big tech and big ag monopolists that are trying to dry up Colorado's water. I am the only lawyer in this field who has had a structural record on taking on those fights in court and winning.
Water is the precious lifeblood of Colorado, and I will be the prosecutor to defend it and protect it for our ranchers, farmers, and all of us. I love this question, because if you live in Park and you live in Douglas County, you've seen the developments go up all throughout your community, and you've thought about, talked about, and read about where is the water coming from? How are we getting the water for the communities that we're building and developing? So when it comes to the Colorado River Compact, let me be really clear here. The negotiations failing is a failure. We're going to end up with the Trump administration deciding what the solution is for Colorado, a state that he said he's going to retaliate against. I will take Trump to court and defend Colorado's water. I'll defend Colorado's water against other states, and that's happening right now, where Nebraska believes they have a right to come into Colorado and take our water. It sounds a little bit like an invasion to me. But we have to stop and protect our water. It's also about holding corporate polluters responsible and blocking private equity firms from their buy and dry schemes, where they leverage communities that are struggling financially. And they go into these communities and they dangle the dollars and they try to get them to sell water rights that they'll never get back. They'll never get it back. San Luis Valley, the Western Slope, I'm the one candidate who's worked in the Attorney General's office who's prepared to fight and win the fights for our water.
All right. Thank you. Jimmy Griswold, how do you protect your water?
Well, like I was mentioning, I grew up in the Big Thompson Canyon with the Big Thompson River roaring in front of our house. And I was lucky over the weekend to take my 22-month-old for the first time to the stream down from our house where I grew up to see just the joy of having this water run through our lives. Towns, Coloradans rely on water. It powers the Colorado economy. It powers the Colorado way of life. The first thing we have to do is implement water protection policies. We are facing historic drought, not just in Colorado, across the entire West. We are seeing obviously hostile federal administration, and the best legal defense is a sound and legally defensible water administration. So that's where it starts. If a call comes, obviously the Attorney General's office, I as Attorney General will vigorously defend Colorado's water rights and really take into account how we all are part of the future of our water management.
Okay, thank you. Let's do a quick follow-up and starting with David, 30 seconds about something Michael raised, about the Nebraska threat of eminent domain, which is under review by the U.S. Supreme Court. What's your legal strategy for defending Colorado's rights in that case?
So, I'll respond to that briefly. I think that this is a no-brainer. I think the condemnation actions by Nebraska are scary, aggressive, and I think will prevail in that fight. There's very little precedent for that kind of conduct. I want to circle back to something that my friend Heddle shared. To just be very clear, I have brought some of the biggest first-in-the-nation cases against big tech companies like Amazon. AI surveillance systems have inspired changes in the law across the country. Legal theories adopted by the Biden administration, the Federal Trade Commission, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and others. Yes, I've got big ideas. We've got the experience fighting for people in court to follow through with them.
Okay, thank you. Heddle, 30 seconds on
So am I answering about
Nebraska.
Nebraska or am I answering,
you have 30 seconds, a lot of your time is left.
I guess we will cover that point, and I appreciate my friend David's point there. Let's talk about Nebraska. Nebraska is a perfect example of a case brought for purely partisan and political reasons that have no basis sounding in law. And so the people of Colorado will prevail in court, but what a loss long-term in terms of resources and opportunity that those lawyers in the AG's office could be doing something else. The legal strategy around this eminent domain issue isn't even going to get to the eminent domain issue because Nebraska didn't even finish the negotiations. There is not standing and rightness in terms of the legal question before the court. And so this is why experience matters, is because we want to identify the lowest surface area, the smallest surface area with respect to the issue that will be briefed to the court so that Coloradans win.
Okay, thank you.
I brought it up because it's a priority for me, and protecting our water is what I'm going to do as your next Attorney General. The suit by Nebraska, the action by Nebraska is purely political theater. It has no chance of succeeding. The law is on our side. What you need is a fighter who's going to make sure we win the case in court. There's no question that Nebraska has no chance. And I think it's a shame that we now have to waste resources that are limited within the Attorney General's office to defend Colorado's water from Nebraska's overreach and their action that's purely designed for politics, and I'll stand against it. Thank you.
what's the?
Yeah, I was just waiting for the timer.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Well, I agree with what Heddle said. I think that's absolutely the right strategy, and we will fight as rigorously as possible to protect Colorado resources, especially water resources. I would not go as far to say that this is an invasion by Nebraska. I don't think that is a good description of it. But generally, we have to take a holistic approach to our water. The Nebraska suit is part of it. I do want to underline in the next question
Finish your sentence.
that there's an entire team of water experts, of natural resource experts in the Attorney General's office that have been working on this case, working on the strategies to protect our water. So I want to make sure that folks understand that the next Attorney General is not alone in defending our state. There are 700 phenomenal attorneys and staff members in that office who have been in these exact fights, including the fight against Nebraska.
Okay, thank you. Next question, we'll go back to Amanda and Heddle. How important is courtroom experience for the Attorney General? And let me note that the incumbent, Phil Weiser, didn't have much when he was elected, as his Republican opponent repeatedly pointed out in the 2018 campaign. We're 8 years later, it's come up in the race. How important is courtroom experience?
It's absolutely critical. Here's why. This moment is so different than 2017 and 2018. We had a functioning-ish executive branch in the legislature back then in a way that we do not today. Our executive branch federally is an open-air corruption market. Our legislature, I'm not sure what we're paying them to do right now. The only place where the theater of battle is succeeding is in the courtroom. And so this is why I don't think it's enough to be a figurehead leader and an attorney general who says, I'm simply going to rely on the wonderful, dedicated career staff in the Attorney General's office. These are first of their kind legal issues, and I have to tell you as a management philosophy, I don't believe in asking my staff and my team to do something that I have not myself done before. I am the only candidate in this race that has deep expertise in civil law and in criminal law. The Attorney General's office does both. I have tried cases and supervised civil and criminal cases. I have tried cases in state court and in federal court. I have experience in the appellate courts as well. That matters in this particular moment where everything is on the line. We cannot delegate that in terms of saying figurehead leadership is enough. We need real leadership in this moment.
Corporate experience, legal experience certainly matters. This is not a race for governor or U.S. Senate. It's a race for Attorney General. I'm here to tell you need an attorney to be the Attorney General. That means actually going to court and leading people on cases. When it comes to suing Donald Trump, that's an incredibly important decision. You can't simply say, I'm going to let her do it. I'm going to let him do it. The buck stops with the Attorney General. And don't be fooled, Phil Weiser had a ton of legal experience before he became Attorney General. Courtroom experience matters. I'll tell you this. There's a gentleman here tonight, he's the father of Magnus White, who was killed in a really tragic crash. That crash involved missteps by law enforcement from the beginning. So I took that case myself, and that case went to trial, and I stood before the jury. But what that means is now when I tell my staff, you have enough to file charges, they know that I'm making a decision not because I'm a figurehead, but because I've been in court and I know what it takes. And as a leader of the Manhattan DA's office, the Attorney General's office, and the Boulder County District Attorney's office, I'm the one person here who's been doing this for 30 years. That's what I'm going to bring to the Attorney General's office. Not just courtroom experience, but leadership experience. That's absolutely key.
That's a great question, because when Phil Weiser was running for office, he was criticized for not having sufficient trial experience, and we all have seen he's been a great Attorney General. The Attorney General is not a trial attorney. The Attorney General's work includes drafting, reviewing, enforcing rules and contracts, advising agencies on all different types of laws, advising constitutional statewide office holders, and managing a very large office. In fact, according to the 2018 Weiser campaign, prior to 2019, no sitting Colorado Attorney General has personally tried a case since the 1860s. The AG is an executive who manages a large office, provides the legal direction and strategic way forward. That's why my experience is more relevant to the job. I have over 7 years of experience leading a large statewide agency, guiding the legal direction of the Colorado Department of State. And as in my role as Secretary of State, I've been in the center of some high-profile election and democracy issues.
Okay, thank you. David.
Secretary Griswold is right, but the Attorney General typically is not the one literally standing up in court. But here's where I disagree with you. One of the most important things that the next Attorney General will have to do is to use the law in bold and courageous and imaginative kinds of ways to take on the rampant corruption and corporate abuse, which is hijacking our lives and hijacking our democracy. That's the kind of experience we need in this office right now. That's the work that I've been doing throughout my career. We're bringing antitrust cases, the first of their kind, on behalf of fast food workers and sheep herders, taking on AI surveillance systems, bringing the first case in the country against the Department of Corrections here in Colorado to challenge the use of involuntary servitude inside our prisons. Second, I'm the only candidate in this race who has dedicated my career to standing up in court for people, for the underdog, for human beings. I understand, and it's critical for the next AG, how the law is rigged against ordinary people, and I'll be focused like a laser on rigging it. Because if we want to fight for the rule of law in this country, we have to show people that the law can work for them.
David referred to you.
Absolutely. I would share that I've managed the Secretary of State's office during one of the most difficult times, during one of the greatest attacks on democracy and elections in recent times. I'm also the only candidate with the experience that Coloradans care most about, taking on Donald Trump, standing up to Trump. I believe he is an existential threat to our democracy, the rule of law, and our nation. After January 6th, I urged that he be disqualified from the Colorado ballot, removed from the Colorado ballot for inciting the insurrection. I am currently being sued by Trump's DOJ for refusing to hand over sensitive voter data. As Secretary of State, I've stood up to him, and as Attorney General, I will take on Trump and MAGA extremists.
Next question, starting with Michael Doherty, and this is just chance that this is your question. Colorado's crime rate is higher than other states since the pandemic, according to some national rankings. It's among the least safe states in the country. What specifically will you do as Attorney General to change that?
For me, public safety will not be a campaign promise, it's a record. And that's what I've been doing my entire career, and it's why property crimes are down over 25% in Boulder County. Car thefts are down by over 35%. It's why we're a leader in efforts to reduce gun violence. The Attorney General plays a key role when it comes to public safety in 3 ways. First, the Attorney General is actually in charge of training for all law enforcement throughout the entire state of Colorado. So if you're joining the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, Boulder Police Department, or the Denver PD, the training is all the same that comes from the Attorney General. So making sure that they're having the support they need, but also being held accountable is absolutely key. We need to do more when it comes to addressing behavioral health needs with mental health treatment and substance abuse treatment. That's why I started the first mental health diversion program in the entire state of Colorado. It's why I have a Fresh Start Warrant Forgiveness program. The program is designed to help people get back on the right track. But it's also about holding people accountable when they violate the rule of law and making sure there's consequences for criminal conduct. And that's why I've been going to the legislature for years and going to court for years and leading large offices doing exactly that. It has to be a greater priority for the Attorney General of the state of Colorado for the very reason you stated, and it will be for me. Thank you.
What will you do as Attorney General to make Colorado safer?
Every Coloradan deserves to live in a safe community. That's something that I think we all share. I do want to highlight that crime rates are lower now since their spike during the pandemic, but we must continue to work to reduce them. As Attorney General, I will focus on both the crime and the root cause of the crime. That includes mental health, drug addiction, gun violence, sexual assault. One of my top priorities is to pass a stronger assault weapons ban. I fundamentally believe that we should feel safe dropping our kids off to school, and elected officials need to stop being so scared of the gun lobby and be aggressive when it comes to making our communities safe. I also will absolutely work to fix the rape kit backlog in our state. It's frankly unacceptable that victims have had to wait months and months and months to try to get justice. We also need to ensure that people who are reintegrating after leaving prison have the opportunity to reintegrate. And there's some really great examples that we can lean on from across the state. As Attorney General, I plan to work on making sure that our communities are safe and everybody feels like they have a safe place to live.
Okay, thank you.
Public safety is the most important function of government. It absolutely is. Look, the Attorney General isn't like a district attorney prosecuting street crime in the way we normally think of it. The Attorney General plays critical roles in protecting our safety in many ways. I want to highlight a few of my priorities. We are not going to mass incarcerate our way out of these problems. What we have to be doing is investing in the things that we know keep communities safe. In particular, mental health, behavioral health, substance use treatment. We have some of the worst funding for those things in the country, bottom 10 in the country. I'll create a community health and safety fund, building on Attorney General Weiser's work with the Opioid Abatement Fund, holding accountable the corporate bad actors that are making us unsafe, the healthcare companies putting profits over people, the big oil companies poisoning our kids and getting away with it. And we're going to take the proceeds of that litigation and we're going to invest them in the things that we know keep us safe. Mental health, behavioral health, substance use treatment. We've got a recidivism rate coming out of DOC of 50%. The same pattern is not working right now.
Okay, thank you.
The government's obligation to its people with respect to public safety is sacrosanct. If we aren't alive or safe, we can't experience any of our other rights, right? And so there are three things that I want to add to this conversation. Number one, the Attorney General is not a super DA, but the Attorney General has the power, responsibility, and privilege of making sure that Coloradans are safe on a systemic and structural level. And so as your next Attorney General, I will prioritize making sure that cartels and conspiracy and organized crime that terrorize our communities are dealt with. Second, it is not enough to say that the data is showing that crime rates are down if we don't feel safe. How many people that go to their local downtown area feel safe in terms of leaving their cars, making sure they take their kids out to dinner, or something else? There is something more fundamental that is broken in this moment, and that requires the credibility of an Attorney General that meets the moment to provide for that safety. Third, and critically, the key to resolving public safety issues is to make sure we address the root cause, which is the affordability crisis. That is why consumer protection and antitrust work is absolutely critical in making sure that our streets are safe. And then respectfully, with respect to all the talk about rehabilitation and reentry and some of these other types of programs, it is the job of the Attorney General to do that, but that is work that I have already done as a prosecutor.
Next question, again, let's start again coincidentally with Jenny Griswold, but this is just more of kind of a yes or no question, and we'll have a follow-up. Was Tina Peters' nearly 9-year sentence too harsh, as the Court of Appeals found?
That was up to the district court to reconsider, and that's what I will say.
Well, do you agree that was too harsh, like the Court of Appeals found?
I agree that the governor should not have granted clemency and should have let the legal process work its way out. I do not believe that someone like Tina Peters, someone who has caused more harm to our democracy than any other person in the state of Colorado, should get special treatment because Trump is retaliating against the state of Colorado. I fundamentally believe she has all the rights in the world to appeal her case. The court system was working its way out. The Court of Appeals told the district court to re-sentence, and having the governor intervene is highly inappropriate and a hugely dangerous precedent to set, both for the state of Colorado and nationally. That's what I believe.
Okay, thank you. Jacob.
I'll say with candor, Ernest, I actually don't feel comfortable answering that question because I don't have all of the facts that were before the district court judge. The sentencing decisions are really challenging ones. They involve a lot of really important considerations. I think it's important that we allow our judicial process to play out to determine, and it would be important to allow our judicial process to play out to determine an appropriate sentence for Tina Peters. I have very strong feelings about the governor's decision to commute her sentence. I don't feel comfortable weighing in the abstract on the harshness of her sentence.
Okay, thank you. Panel.
So I agree with David that the question of whether the district court sentence was too harsh isn't the appropriate question in this moment. It's whether the judicial process should have been short-circuited to substitute the judgment of the governor in place of all of the people in the process that rendered that decision. And so I have described the decision to commute this sentence as an absolute betrayal. It is a betrayal to the 12 jurors who took an oath and listened to the evidence and made a decision along with the district court judge. It is a betrayal to all of the clerks and all of the people that work on our elections to keep our elections safe. And it is a betrayal more broadly to the judicial system that didn't get an opportunity to finish. So the question on the 9 years is, I think that's TBD in terms of what the district court would have decided.
Okay, thank you.
Tina Peters abused her authority, engaged in public misconduct, and undercut the integrity of elections. She was tried justly by District Attorney Dan Rubenstein, who's endorsed me for Attorney General. Was her sentence too harsh? First sentence was too harsh. Then the governor should have looked at every other nonviolent offender in state prison, every other person of color in state prison. The only reason she's getting out is because she's a political crony of Donald Trump. Was her sentence too harsh? No. And it was an absolute miscarriage of justice that the governor bent the knee to the president of the United States.
Let's do a 30-second round here. Who do we have? David. If you win the primary and go on to win the general, you'll be the chief law enforcement officer in a state where roughly 75% of the voters aren't Democrats. How do you let those folks know that you're working for them and aren't primarily a partisan official?
Thanks for the question, Ernest. By fighting for them every day, for their prosperity, for their freedom, for their safety. This job is not a partisan job. It's not about getting on MSNBC. It's not about trying to ascend to the next job in your political career. This is about fighting for the people of Colorado. I'm so proud to have the endorsement of one of my clients. Someone who has never voted for a Democrat in his life, John Rufino. He's supporting my campaign because he's an Afghan war veteran. He came back from Afghanistan. He was trapped in a non-compete agreement. He said, "This isn't the freedom that I fought for, but you're the kind of lawyer who fights for my freedom, and that's why I'm supporting the run for Attorney General." That's the kind of Attorney General I'll be.
All right, thank you.
I think that the 75% that you're identifying is what makes Colorado so great. The idea that we don't exercise fealty to a particular dogma or ideology. We start and end with facts and what's just. And so as your next Attorney General, I'm not engaged or interested in empire building. I'm not auditioning for any other job. The reason that those people will feel protected by me, because my work will always start and finish with what's best for Colorado, to include people that have a D by their name or an R by their name, because they all deserve respect, due process, and transparency from the next Attorney General.
Ernest is absolutely right. The Attorney General is the chief law enforcement officer. And that's why I, as a prosecutor for justice, is qualified to be the next Attorney General. It is critically important to have experience handling cases with integrity, doing justice without fear or favor. I'm the one person on this stage that has successfully prosecuted police officers, successfully prosecuted elected officials, including Democrats. That's what it means to fight for justice with integrity. That's why I have endorsements from district attorneys all around the state, from former U.S. attorneys, from the sheriffs from around the state. Let me stress this, it's strong bipartisan support. They know they'll disagree with me on a whole host of issues, including who should be in the White House, but they believe I'm the right person to fight for justice for Colorado. Thank you.
Next one with Heddle, managing what's essentially.
Ernest, do you want me to answer?
Oh, Gina, I'm sorry.
Whatever you guys want to do, this is your rodeo.
I knew I did that one.
No worries. Well, let me give two examples, and let's start with the Tina Peters example. It was my office that discovered the likely evidence of a breach. Civil servants traveled there, started the investigation with the DA and others in the room. I removed Tina Peters from direct election oversight, and then we worked to appoint my 2018 Republican opponent, Wayne Williams, to oversee Mason County. Because I wanted to make sure that the residents of Mason County that lean more conservative had absolute confidence in their elections. I think that was at 30 seconds or a minute. I'll leave you with that one example, and maybe if we open this back up, a second example.
Okay, thanks. Who's next?
It's me.
Is it Mel? Okay,
You started a
yeah,
management
sorry.
question, but I didn't get, it was a real cliffhanger.
It's a management question. To preface, as we've seen with the exodus from the Department of Justice and the Trump administration, it matters who's at the top and who's running the Department of Law here in Colorado. Often described as one of the largest, if not the largest, law firms in the state. What's your experience managing employees? You referenced that before. How will you promote a workplace culture designed to build morale and retain the experienced attorneys who could find much better pay at the outside world? Go back to a minute on this.
Oh, wait a minute. I've done it before, and there's proof of concept. So as I shared with you, I was the Biden-Harris administration's choice to be the top antitrust litigator for the entirety of the United States for the Department of Justice. There, I not only led 800 teams of 800 lawyers and professional staff in cases of a generation, cases we haven't even talked about today, 2 cases against Google, Apple, Ticketmaster that you've seen in the news, RealPage, right? Getting public servants excited to charge up a hill that every newspaper in America is going to tell you you're going to lose the case is the art, is the beauty behind public service. I feel the exodus of the Department of Justice's lawyer personally, as someone who dedicated more than a decade of service, not because I always agreed with my principle, but because I always believed that our leaders were there to say, do the right thing for the right reasons in the right way. That's not happening anymore. And so in this moment, recruiting and retaining talent at the Department of Law for the state of Colorado is the highest and most important purpose of the next Attorney General, because that is how we fill the void that the federal government has left behind. I am the one candidate who has done that and at the scale required for this job. Thank you.
The question is, will they follow you into the fight? And for me, throughout my entire career, that has been answered with a resounding yes. 1,300 people worked under my command at the Manhattan DA's office. 8 months after I arrived in Colorado, I was made Deputy Attorney General and put in charge of the entire criminal section and handled cases all around the state. And for the last 8 years in Boulder County, I've been elected by the voters 3 times because I have a great office that is a leader in criminal justice reform and has led the community through times of crisis and always fought for justice. It's about having leadership experience. And if you want the answer to this question, I suggest you Google my name, Michael Dougherty, and put employee issues. You won't see any interesting answers. And then Google each candidate's name and put employee issues and see what comes up. Each one of us has a record to stand by, and for me, it's a record that I'm proud of. So when I go to events around the state and when I look out at the people here, I see people that I've worked with my entire career. The AG's office, the Boulder County District Attorney's office, people supporting this campaign because they believe in me as a leader, and I'm going to be proud to lead the Attorney General's office and have them believe in the mission of fighting for all of Colorado. Thank you.
It's a great question. I currently manage over 150 people, a budget that reaches $50 million-ish, depending on the year. And I've managed this office as we've been under siege. Siege from the big lie, siege from election deniers. I personally have received over 3,000 threats, violent threats, and death threats, but my employees have received threats also. And I have been so proud of our work, and I have their back, because public service right now is extremely hard. And making sure you have someone's back means all the difference. You know, I would share that I am proud to have the endorsement of Colorado Wins, which is the union that represents state employees. I actually opted my office into their representation when that bill was moving several years ago. But more importantly, I am proud of all the work that my office has done. 70% more drop boxes, implementing automatic voter registration, which has led to over 900,000 new voters registered, and holding the line under tremendous stress to protect the right to vote for every Republican, Democrat, and unaffiliated voter in the state of Colorado.
Thank you. I've got a different kind of management experience than anyone else on the stage. The experience of building something from the ground up. Turning my tiny little nonprofit legal organization into a national powerhouse in the fight for economic justice and for civil rights. Bringing and winning some of the biggest cases in the country against the Trump administration, against the biggest corporations in the world. I've done it by recruiting and retaining some of the best lawyers in the country. Helping to empower them every day to take on cases where there are sometimes 10 times as many lawyers on the other side, making 5 times as much as they are. I've done it by helping to manage coalitions across Colorado of hundreds and hundreds of people fighting and passing bold legislative wins, like our first in the nation Farm Worker Bill of Rights, a dozen worker and consumer protection laws. That's the kind of scrappy entrepreneurial management experience that we need now more than ever.
All right, to Mr. Doherty. By some measures, Colorado is among the most regulated states in the country. The news coverage says that. And since the pandemic, we've been seeing companies close and leave the state at rates higher than usual and more than folks feel comfortable with. What do you do as Attorney General to reverse this?
Colorado is now the 6th most regulated state in the country. So when you wonder during the introduction, why is it businesses are not coming to Colorado? Why is it people are leaving Colorado? It's a great place to live. My family and I moved from Brooklyn, New York, in the Manhattan DA's office, to live and work in Colorado because it is a truly special place. And I will fight for the state. But right now, the reality is the regulations we have in place are burdensome. If you're trying to put a deck on the back of your house, or you're trying to build a business, or expand, or move into Colorado with a new IT company, you're turning away because we've become over-regulated with good intentions, but bad results. So to me, as the Attorney General and the Chief Lawyer for the state of Colorado, it's about making sure the legislature doesn't put too many regulations in place on every single bill. I've been going to the legislature for the last 16 years. First as the head of the criminal section for the Attorney General's office, and then as a leader amongst the district attorneys. I've seen it happen, and I know what it takes to make sure that we're striking the right balance between being overregulated and allowing people to thrive, and are allowing our economy to come back and recover from where we are right now. And I'm committed to doing exactly that. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. John.
I think it's dangerous to say that we're overregulated on every single topic. Regulations are there to protect all of us every single day, to protect our water, the air we're breathing, to protect our elections, our daily life. I do think it's important to strike the right balance, and that means, what actually makes common sense. The Attorney General, of course, reviews rules to make sure that they are in compliance with the law and that they're constitutional. I'll absolutely do that as Attorney General. My approach in my current office is that we only put rules forward if we can identify a real need, because there is a risk that things get really complicated. I know in my current office where we're talking about the business side, elections, but for the county clerks, it's really important that they have a clear understanding of what their duties are. But that doesn't mean that we take a no regulation approach. The rules are there for a reason.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Yeah, we gotta get rid of stupid red tape, especially the stupid red tape that favors monopolists, and we see it all the time. Sometimes the wealthiest, most powerful corporations, they don't have a hard time complying with some of the regulations that we've got on the books, but small businesses have, it's more challenging for them. And I see how this happens in the Capitol. When I show up to fight for worker and consumer protections, right? We see how Corporate lobbyists making $1 million a year will happily, bargain over narrow technical loopholes. But when it comes to the big, important structural reforms, to take on the fact that in one of the wealthiest states in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, we still have far too many Coloradans who don't have voice and power on the job, far too many Coloradans who are struggling to put a roof over their heads. When those corporate lobbyists show up in the building, for example, to engage over the Worker Protection Act, a law in Colorado that would, a bill in Colorado that would make it easier for workers to unionize and get rid of Colorado's outlier status of having this weird second election, right? Then they'll throw tantrums. The governor should sign the Worker Protection Act, by the way. The next one should if he doesn't.
So I think we just heard a lot of talk about how regulations may be imperfect and we should do something about it, but I don't think we heard an answer to what we should actually do about it. Here's what I propose. I agree with my friend David that a one-size-fits-all approach to the regulatory environment is deeply problematic and it usually inures to the benefit for those who have money and power. So how are we going to fix it? I think we have to conduct an audit with respect to the regulatory landscape that exists in Colorado to make sure that that one-size-fits-all treatment is not fundamentally burdening small and medium-sized businesses. I will tell you that often it is the biggest, most powerful companies that cheat and violate the rule of law that are actually trying to create an oppositional dynamic between regulation and business. That dynamic does not have to exist. I will tell you that the people who want regulation are the honest businesses that are trying to make a real living and win on the American dream, win with the best idea. They're the ones that we should be taking ideas from with respect to the right fit in terms of the regulatory environment, and that's what I'll do as your next Attorney General.
Sorry, I'm happy to answer again.
Yeah.
I should have just acted like I hadn't answered.
Besides which, we're approaching the end here. I think we have time for a couple more questions and then closing arguments. Closing.
Just told a bunch of lawyers are going to get a closing argument now that now the things are going to get weird.
That's right. Jenna, the nonpartisan Attorney General Alliance has working groups devoted to, among other topics, cybersecurity and cryptocurrency, artificial intelligence, organized retail crime, and human trafficking. Can you pick one of those and describe how you'll make Colorado a national leader on that front in the next few years?
I'm sorry, Ernest, can you repeat the list?
Well, cybersecurity and cryptocurrency, artificial intelligence, organized retail crime, and human trafficking. Those are their top working groups right now.
Perfect. Well, I would say human trafficking is highly important. Often there's not enough elected officials who are standing up for the most vulnerable, especially for vulnerable women, vulnerable young girls, and it's something that I really look forward to getting involved with. There's a lot of great working groups all across the country. As Secretary of State, we participate in Secretary of State working groups, and you learn a lot from other states, what has worked, what has not worked. On the topic of standing up for women, I do want to touch on something we haven't talked about yet, and that's Trump's assault on abortion access. I'll share with you, as a newer mom who used fertility treatments, I will do everything in my power to stand up to this administration to protect moms, women, and all people to have access to reproductive health care. That includes birth control, IVF, and abortion access.
How do you call out a national leader on one of those topics, if you agree that those are worthy topics?
Those are worthy topics. There are other topics too, but let me tell you, when I'm Attorney General, Colorado will be a national leader in the fight to hold big tech and AI accountable. We are at a tipping point moment in this country where soon-to-be trillionaires are building out AI systems to spy on us, to jack up our prices, to drive down our wages, to crush our unions, building the data centers that are guzzling 1 million gallons of water a day. We saw hundreds of Iranian schoolgirls die because of AI telling us to bomb them in Iran, schoolgirls my daughter's age. No one in this country is going to be able to hold those forces meaningfully accountable as they transform our world more than state attorneys general. We have to be the tip of the spear in fighting back. First, that means enforcing the laws on the books in bold and new ways to address these new threats. That's the work that I've already been doing, taking on workplace surveillance, going after AI hiring technologies, screening people out of jobs. It's also going to mean fighting for new regulations to make sure that the developers of these technologies that are causing this harm, that are going to be displacing millions of jobs potentially, that they are forced to pay, as they profit off of all of us.
Okay, thank you.
Gotta keep my list here. All right, I agree that this list is the right list, and I want to talk about all of them, but I don't have the time to do that. I will tell you that I agree with David that artificial intelligence is the umbrella under which all of these other issues fall, and here's why. Crypto issues, I was one of the first, part of a ragtag group of prosecutors probably like 10 years ago that was interested in digital assets and crypto. I was one of the first, amongst the first, who ever charged a crypto crime as a money laundering crime under federal law. It's critical. The issue from crypto that extends to artificial intelligence and why the cases against Google and Apple, for example, are critically important is because it controls the future of data and power and the ways in which they influence our lives, right? That's not just our ability to get a job, the ability to pay a fair price at the grocery store. It's fundamentally about our privacy and our ability to access resources. So for example, when Secretary Griswold talks about abortion access, the critical piece there is that if Google maintains its search monopoly and uses artificial intelligence to cement that monopoly, it means that when someone searches for unplanned pregnancy and termination, that the Pregnancy Crisis Center is on page 1 of the search results, and Planned Parenthood is not until page 3. That is an existential crisis that we have to deal with, and as Colorado's next Attorney General, I will marshal the experience that I have to fight back.
From that list, I'm very tempted to go with cybercrime, because I married the head of the identity theft and cybercrime unit at the Manhattan DA's office. But although it's score me points at home, I'm going to talk about human trafficking. Because I've seen so many human trafficking victims during the course of my career. I was the deputy chief in charge of the sex crimes unit at the Manhattan DA's office, and I launched the first human trafficking unit within the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. That work on behalf of marginalized and vulnerable community members who are being sexually assaulted, so often kids, teenagers, has been something I've been passionate about and fighting for justice on for years. That's why when I became district attorney in 2018, I launched the first human trafficking unit in the state of Colorado. And we have brought down crime ring after crime ring after crime ring, operating all throughout the Front Range in the metro area. Because human trafficking is going on in every state. In Colorado, it was going on unaddressed until my office stepped up and took it on. What we need to do next is get social media companies to be held responsible for protecting kids. So in the last 2 years, 2 pieces of legislation that I supported have been vetoed by Governor Polis because he sides with the corporations and the profit over the people. And as your next Attorney General, I'll always fight for the inverse and fight for victims of sex assaults and human trafficking. It's what I've done in my entire career, and I'll make Colorado a leader in doing it. Thank you.
David, let's get in one last question here, and then we'll have your closing remarks. I'll find it here. If you're elected Attorney General in November, you'll be in office for the 2028 presidential election. What will you do? What legislation will you support? What other tools does your office have available to ensure that Colorado's elections are conducted freely and fairly?
The threats to our democracy are real and they are terrifying. This office is going to be critically important in confronting those threats. So there's the easy stuff, right? How do we make sure we hold the Trump administration accountable? We go to full court, we bring the constitutional claims that we're going to need to bring in order to preserve Colorado's sovereign authority to govern our own elections. As I mentioned earlier, I think we're also going to need to have to use Colorado law in bold and new ways, perhaps, to hold accountable individuals who try to sabotage our elections, including by prosecuting them under state law, because Donald Trump cannot pardon someone who has been convicted of a state crime. Again, that is why it is so absurdly dangerous that Governor Polis has commuted Tina Peters' sentence. But it's not just that, I gotta say, the only thing that's gonna save us here is the only thing that ever has, the power of working people to come together and fight for a better future. That's why I'm going to continue fighting for the Worker Protection Act, right? Because working people, collective power, this is critical not just to our economic rights, it's critical to the future of our democracy.
As someone who grew up in the cradle of the civil rights movement, I grew up 90 miles from the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. I have understood and seen and lived in the shadow of the civil rights movement and the protections that our right to vote guarantees us. We are now 3 steps backward from where we were in the 1960s and 1970s. There is no greater issue in modern time than this one. At the Department of Justice, I was an official 2016 election monitor where I helped to implement and oversee the implementation of consent decrees. I am familiar with the federal laws with respect to elections, the integrity of our elections, and there is nothing, again, that is more important. And so here's what I will tell you. Every lawyer up here is going to tell you they're going to fight Trump, they're going to fight for our voting rights, they're going to take the issues to court. Today, the District of DC, a federal judge said to a bunch of organizations with respect to the executive order on mail-in ballots, you guys don't have the arguments. I can't stop, I can't issue the injunction with respect to mail-in ballots. Your next Attorney General has to be ready to go to court in 30 minutes to file that preliminary injunction and get the case organized in a way that can win. I am the only former Fed in this race. I know the limits of federal constitutional power. I am prepared to take that case to the court in 30 minutes and fight for you.
I have a vision for a better future for Colorado. We only get there if we defend our democracy. And that starts with defending our elections. It's about protecting mail-in ballots, which we all use to vote, and President Trump did as well, by the way. It's also about keeping ICE away from the ballot boxes and making sure people who have been disenfranchised by barriers for years of this country's history, and now barriers being put up to deny them right to vote, that the Attorney General has to have the ability and the passion and the experience to take down those barriers. The law is on our side. It's not a federal law matter, it's a state law matter. The US Constitution delegates this power to the states. And as someone who spent his entire career fighting in state court for what's right, I'm ready to do it. Which is why I'm the one person on this stage who has prosecuted election fraud cases around Colorado, including a state house representative who was elected in Boulder County. And when the case came to my attention, it was suggested to me, you should get the Weld County District Attorney. He's a Republican, that way you don't have to take on a Democrat. I said, heck no, it's about doing justice without fear and without favor. She was convicted of election fraud and removed from office. That's the experience I bring to this, and I will fight to preserve our democracy. Thank you.
Jen,
I think the question was new laws to put in place ahead.
what will you do, including the possibility of supporting new laws? What other tools the AG has to protect elections in 2028 if you're Attorney General?
A lot of the new laws I have already led and worked with the legislature to pass. That includes First in the Nation law to make it a crime for fake electors to try to steal the presidential election. A First in the Nation law that makes it a felony to compromise voting equipment. That was after Tina Peters, the First in the Nation response to an election denier. We made it a crime to threaten election workers. I've released money to the counties to upgrade their security. And make no mistake, the attack on the 26th election is already happening. And the decisions we make now, the advice that the next Attorney General will give to the Secretary of State is crucial. For example, I refuse to hand over your sensitive voter data because Trump is trying to build a nationwide voter database where he can choose who gets a mail ballot, who gets the full franchise. I made the decision as Secretary of State not to comply. There is no one in a better position to work with the next Secretary of State to protect the 2028 election.
Appreciate everyone sticking with us here. We're at the end. Well, if you'd like to begin, you each get 1 minute for your closing statements.
I went first for the opening. You still want me to go first?
Yeah, we're going around. Let's go ahead.
I'm happy to go too.
Either way.
Why don't we go in reverse order?
Okay,
David and Jen and Michael and how about that?
Yeah, we're sort of used to this pretty good cadence here with forums. I want to tell you a story about my client, Kathy. Kathy's husband died, and the hospital billed her incorrectly for thousands of dollars she didn't owe. They sued her. She had one thing of value left in her life, her late husband's wedding band. She sold it to make the debt collectors go away. I'm here to tell you, we do not need to be living this way. We just don't. And I know it because Kathy and I fought back. And now across Colorado, billion-dollar hospital systems can no longer hide behind their debt collectors. I know it because I'm the guy on the stage who has stood up in court for the underdog, for human beings, fighting every day, bringing bold, first-in-the-nation cases, fighting and winning, taking on a broken legal system, a rigged economy, the corruption that has given rise to Donald Trump and to the oligarchs that he has invited to pillage our democracy. You deserve an attorney general who is ready, who has the vision and the experience every day to go on offense for working families, even if it's the last political job he ever has. That's exactly what we'll do. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for sticking in this late night debate. I really appreciate you being here. We have seen the rule of law and the foundations of our democracy pushed to the brink. We cannot allow this brazen power grab to go unchecked. I'm running for Attorney General because I have taken on Trump and MAGA extremists since my first days in office, and I will not back down now. As Colorado's chief election officer, I protected the right to vote. We've increased drop boxes, guaranteed voting access on public colleges and on tribal lands, and passed automatic voter registration. I took on Tina Peters, and I'm currently being sued by Trump's DOJ for refusing to hand over sensitive voter data. Standing up to Trump and extremists is not easy. I've received violent threats, death threats against me, my husband, and even our 1-year-old little baby. But that has not stopped me from doing what's right. I've been in this fight since the early days as a young attorney, and I will not stop now when our ideals of our country, our fundamental freedoms are on the line. I hope I can count on your support. Thank you.
Michael.
Throughout my career, I've been a leader in criminal justice reform and public safety, and I've always fought for justice. So the person who held Tina Peters accountable, Dan Rubenstein, the district attorney, he's endorsed my campaign, so he knows what it takes to stand and fight for Colorado. That's why when it comes to issues like immigration, I've been a leader in fighting for immigrants and for victims. I think you'd agree with me, if someone's a victim of a sex assault, they should be able to pick up the phone and call 911 and go to the hospital for treatment and go to the courthouse so I can hold the offender accountable without fear that the 911 call is going to trigger them and their kids being deported. That's why since 2018, I've had an immigrant protection program. This is not a campaign promise. This is a track record. That immigrant protection program involves me doing Know Your Rights trainings all around the state of Colorado. It involved me becoming a leader in expanding immigrant protections from Boulder County statewide last year. It's why I have the support of law enforcement and district attorneys and former U.S. attorneys, because I will always fight for justice and do it with integrity. That's why when it comes to gun violence, I'm going to continue to fight to reduce gun violence by vigorously prosecuting cases and fighting for sensible legislative reforms. And I'm going to take statewide a program I just started, passing out free gun safes to gun owners who reduce stolen guns in the community. That's what it means to fight for public safety and not simply to be overly political. That's what we need in the Attorney General's office now more than ever. Thank you.
We all live it. I don't need to tell you, this is a moment that's really fundamentally about safety. It's about our personal safety, public safety, right? It's about our economic safety, and it's about our political safety. We've been circling around these questions all night, but they come down to the question of how do we get to live full and free lives in this country? This country, and we've been hand-waving a little bit at immigration here tonight, have not squarely dealt with that issue, but it is a country that my parents left everything behind for to take a shot on the American dream. And so when we are talking about the kind of Colorado that we want to build, I started with the question of who's fighting for you. It's not the person who's going to give the fiery speech. It's not the person who's going to skate around the questions. It's not the person that's not going to acknowledge that they don't have all of the experience that maybe everyone else does, right? It's the person that you want in the foxhole, you want at that table fighting for you. So I would humbly ask that you test all of us, go back, look at our records, because in this moment, the fight begins and ends with Colorado, and it would be my honor and privilege to be your lawyer. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight. We hope you've learned something about candidates. And I'd like to thank again our sponsors, Colorado Politics, Monitor, the Denver Gazette, Common Sense Institute, and thanks to the Base Center. It's a great facility, and hopefully we can all go see the dance recital.
And thank you to you guys. Thank you to you guys. It's not an easy job to moderate these things, so thank you.
Thank you. Maybe a round of applause for the candidates all together. Thank you.